Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Sade. Thank y'all so much for joining me back on my podcast, Hidden Alchemy Podcast. And for today's episode, we are diving into how to cultivate self love. Now, this is a topic I really love diving into because self love and the self love journey, it has really been the hashtag for about over a year now, I should say, where so many people have just been on this journey of cultivating self love, self honor, self respect. And I love that for us, especially witnessing so many people in the Black community focusing so much on their mental health as well as developing self love or using their mental health care as a form of self love. So, we're going to dive into how do you cultivate something like this? Because when you talk about the term self love, it's such a vague, broad terminology, and it's really going to be dependent upon what each and every person thinks or believes about what the term love means for them or what the term self love means for them as well. So, I'm going to dive into on my podcast episode how I have cultivated my self love journey and really what self love has meant for me in this past year that I've been focusing so much more on my womanhood and my feminine energy and just being in that self love space. So, let's go ahead and dive into that for today. So, the self love culture. Now, I know if you're on social media, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, there's so many videos out there about like the self love routine. And I love seeing this for the girlies. I'm such a woman's woman, and I love to see us as women, especially us as Black women, just prioritizing our own self love and self care routine. Now, beyond the routine of maybe doing your spa baths, your spa dates with your girlfriends, your facials, getting your nails and your toes done, beyond the exterior of the self love, self care, and just your mechanisms of how you value and take care of yourself in terms of appearance, moving more towards a deeper, more intimate aspect of how does one actually develop a self care or self love ritual, right? Or cultivating that within themselves. And the term love is really going to be so different for everyone, depending on your upbringing, depending on the love that you saw growing up in your home or the lack of love that you saw growing up in your home, and the new terminologies and the new ways of loving on yourself that you develop along your journey. Now, for me, I grew up with two parents in the home, love my parents so much. They've given me so much love, but they've given me their love. And as I've gotten older and developed and grown into my own woman, I've had to redefine what does self-love mean for me and how can I cultivate a deeper, better understanding of self-love? Because truly, once you cultivate that understanding for yourself, that is what you are going to base everything off of. And that is what how other people are going to base how they treat you, how they respect you, how they honor you, and how they view you is really based off of the self-love that you have for yourself. Now, if you saw my other video on building self-esteem and self-worth, some of those topics that I dived into on that podcast episode, I'm going to reiterate here because they are very relevant to how I've developed a self-love routine and just cultivated self-love within myself. Now, the first step for cultivating self love, and again, I want to reiterate this is for me, Sade, not saying that this is how everyone needs to do it, but this is how I have grown on my journey, was through understanding myself, through taking time to learn who is Sade. How does Sade think? How does Sade view the world? How does Sade handle her emotions? How does Sade even feel about certain things? And allowing myself to be in my most truest state, in the light aspects of myself and the dark aspects of myself. Really just taking that time to study. And it is such a beautiful thing when you learn to study yourself. And just think about it. We've spent so many years in school and being in a education system where we've had to study other topics and study other people. Give that same energy back to yourself. Study yourself, understand how your psyche works, and understanding your subconscious mind. And a really beautiful way to understand your subconscious mind is through meditation, as well as through deeper spiritual practices such as Kundalini, astrology, numerology, and even diving into Reiki. So there's different ways on a spiritual level that you can develop a self of understanding or a sense of understanding of self. But starting with meditation is perfectly fine because that's going to help you to just hear yourself, hear your thoughts. Maybe if something happened in the day and you might not have been consciously aware of it in that moment, do a slight meditation practice so you can really check in on how you are feeling, what's coming to the surface. What are you noticing that you might not have noticed before when the situation actually happened or when the event happened, right? So taking that time to study yourself, study your mind, study your emotions, study your actions, reflect on your childhood, right? Reflect on things that might have happened to you, reflect on your parents, because a great way to understand yourself is to understand your parents, because we are replicas of our parents, even if we don't want to believe that. I remember I did not believe this for so long. And once I started to understand my parents through understanding myself, I had a much deeper understanding of myself because I was looking at my mirror and my reflection through my parents. So if you are a person that has your parental figures still here, and even if you don't, through studying maybe the books that they read or looking at photos and just feeling certain energy from them, or if you are able to spend time with your parents or your elders, it could be your grandparents as well, any type of figure that has helped to raise you, take some time to understand them, because that's going to also help you to understand why you view things the way that you view them. And then once you are taking the time to understand yourself, now you know how you operate. You can then go ahead and predict how you are going to act and move in certain instances because you understand your emotions. You understand the way that you think. You understand how you like to move in certain situations. And I would definitely say one of the most important things while you are taking time to understand yourself is to not judge. Do not feel guilty about any way that you feel. And it's very challenging, because you have to allow things to come to the surface. You have to allow emotions to come to the surface, thoughts to come to the surface. And these things are not going to always be pretty. A lot of times they're not going to be pretty. But when you allow yourself to be in the truth of who you are and just seek to understand without judgment, without guilt, without shame, this is going to be a great mechanism for cultivating self-love because you are taking the time to understand yourself. And this is something that I bring up in my yoga classes to my students. Before we start our practice, I always say, notice how you are arriving on your mat. Notice how you are breathing in this space. And this is just a 5 to 10 second moment of just bringing awareness to self. Once you bring that awareness to yourself, then you are better able to understand why you are moving and operating in a certain way. And then you can go ahead and start to fix and change and alter certain things around. But once you understand where your traumas come from, where your pain comes from, where your love comes from, where your joy comes from, where your jealousy comes from, right? The light and the dark, everything has to be included. Nothing is left off the table. That's how you're going to help to develop a really deep understanding of self and cultivate self-love. Now, once I started to understand myself on a deeper level through acts of meditation, through my yoga practice, through Kundalini, through Reiki, through reading, through herbs, so many different mechanisms that you can use out there to understand yourself, then I was able to move to the next stage of honoring myself. And this is where the work gets challenging because now you have to put what you understand about yourself into practice, which means that you have to start setting boundaries. Now, for example, if you understand, and this is not my example, but I'm just saying, for example, if you understand that you have a certain relationship, let's say with your parent, right? And you understand the certain ways that you may feel around this parent. You understand certain ways that this parent may trigger or bring up certain emotions within you. Now, once you understand that, it's time for you to set the proper boundaries in place to protect yourself because you are now aware of how you operate. This is where things get challenging because now we have to speak up for ourselves. We have to develop the courage and the confidence to set certain boundaries in place based off of the information that we've collected and we understand about ourselves. And what I have found through my self-love journey is this is where I started to lose a lot of friends. I started to have to set boundaries, even with my parents. I have certain boundaries that I've set in place with my father, certain boundaries with my mother, my sister, not because I don't love them, but because I understand my boundaries, my mental boundaries, my emotional boundaries, my capabilities. So I now have to say, you know what? Because I understand myself, I now need to protect myself. And I need to do that by making sure I don't do more than what I can handle. Okay, because when you understand that if you take on more, this is when you're going to start to, maybe your mental health, maybe emotional instability, maybe whatever it is. Once you understand that about yourself, it's like you have to speak up, you have to set these boundaries. And I've had to let go of a lot of people, right? Because the self-love journey is really about cultivating peace within oneself. And when you're cultivating peace, you have to sit back and understand, where is the chaos? And a lot of the times the chaos is within ourselves. So we're calming down the chaos within ourselves by understanding ourselves. And now we have to communicate this to the people around us so that they understand, hey, this is something I no longer really want to participate in. This is something, a conversation or things that I really don't care about, or these are things that I don't care to do. I've realized in my life where I've played the caretaker for so many people, I am a healer. And so because I have this healing energy, people are very attracted to that. And I, being the true Virgo that I am, and just being the lover of service, I feel the need to say, okay, let me take care. Let me be that ear. Let me be that solace where you can find, advice from, or where you can find safety from. And I had to realize that my gifts were for me, right? Yeah, they're for me to give to other people, but they're for me to cultivate within myself. I have to cultivate peace within myself and not be the peacemaker for other people all the time. So I had to start setting boundaries in place. I had to start saying, hey, I can talk to you for about 10 to 15 minutes. And then after that, I got things to do, right? Or of course, I wouldn't say it like that, but that was really the gist of it, of I have to set these proper boundaries now because I'm very understanding of the energy that I embody and the energy that I give off. And I don't want it to be overused, because then I won't have anything for myself, right? So cultivating that balance and that peace within self means you have to go about setting boundaries in place. And this can be very uncomfortable in relationships. Not, it can be, it is very uncomfortable. But once you go ahead and start to communicate your needs and what's going on inside and what you need so that you can remain at peace and you can remain balanced within yourself, then you're able to really align yourself in the proper relationships. And this is how you are honoring yourself. When we do things against what we want, that is a form of dishonoring and disrespecting ourselves, which is not a form of self love, right? Because when you are developing your self love journey, you are understanding yourself and you are honoring your needs. And this is very difficult for a lot of us, especially as women. It is so difficult for us as women to know our needs and to put our needs first and to communicate what those needs are with the proper boundaries in set in place. And especially as Black women in this country, I'm going to speak on this because we are cultivated in a country and an environment that is not made for the Black body to thrive. So when a woman, a Black woman, puts her needs first and communicates her needs and says, I'm not going against my boundaries, okay? People don't really know how to handle that. People are like, wait, what? It's this idea of being selfish. It's this idea that women cannot be selfish. And in actuality, when you are developing a self love routine, you have to be a little selfish. You have to be a lot selfish. You got to be stingy with your love. Just like B said, I'm stingy with my love. I'm stingy with the way that I give my energy. I'm stingy with the amount of people that have access to me. Because if I give, what am I going to have for myself? How am I going to preserve my essence? It's so important for women to understand we should actually not be putting anyone's needs before our own, except for our child to a certain extent, right? To a certain age of development, right? Until they're able to take care of themselves. Because us as women, we are the healers of society. So when we put other people's needs before our own, it's really a lack of self love, it's a lack of self honor. because we're not honoring the essence of our feminine. We're not honoring the essence of being a woman, right? So when I feel this way, and some people may not feel this way, and that's perfectly fine. I hold space for every type of opinion, but the way that I have cultivated self-love is by not putting other people's needs before my own, especially because I don't have a child right now, so I can do that, and just honoring my needs and communicating my needs with other people and letting people know those boundaries, right? Saying no when you really want to say no. When we say yes to things that deep down we don't want to do because we've taken the time to understand ourselves, we've taken the time to understand our emotions, that is a way of dishonoring yourself, disobeying yourself for the sake of other people. So when you are on that self-love journey, you got to do the hard work of speaking up, communicating your needs, and learning where on your journey have you felt unworthy of communicating your needs, because that's really what it is. When we don't, a lot of men don't have a problem moving towards their needs. And men are going to always go towards their needs, right? But a lot of us as women, and I'm not going to say all men, but a lot of men probably have this stigma too. I'm just speaking based off of who I know, which is the woman. We have a hard time cultivating what our needs are and speaking up about it. And a lot of times it's because of what we saw in the home, maybe from our own parent, right? So we have to unlearn that and do the work of honoring ourselves by not doing the things we don't want to do, by being okay with putting ourselves first, by being okay with being called different names, right? Being called selfish, being called inconsiderate, simply because you are honoring your needs in a specific moment. When we go against our needs, we are putting ourselves in disalignment because we are not moving from our truth. We are lying and wearing a mask for the sake of protecting the peace of other people. And it's very important to understand how that can play a major role in a form of self-hate or a lack of self-love. I'm not going to say hate because hate could be a very strong word, but a deep lack of self-love and a deep lack of self-respect. And that leads me into my next section of developing a self-love journey for yourself is respect. Self-respect is so important, and you build respect for yourself when you honor yourself, right? When you listen to your needs, when you communicate those needs, and when you don't do things outside of your boundaries, you are now cultivating a level of respect. And when you cultivate a level of respect within yourself, you are setting the tone for how other people will treat you or will not treat you. Now, just because another person is treating you outside of the way that you honor, understand, and respect yourself does not mean that that person has to stay around. No, you build these barriers so that you understand this is how I want to treat myself. Therefore, this is how I will demand other people to treat me. And if it is not being done in that way, cool, you are not a factor in this relationship, right? And a relationship does not have to be romantic. I'm talking about family, I'm talking about friends, I'm talking about business, right? There are so many relationships you can have before you even get to romance. Every relationship is important. So when we are developing self-respect, right, we are letting people know this is the rule book on how I want to be in relation. It may be in alignment with yours, it may not be in alignment with yours, all is well. But because I am on this journey of loving myself, I cannot disrespect myself by tolerating things outside of what I need in order to feel safe. And that really is so important when you respect yourself. Because when you respect yourself, you respect other people's boundaries. And that was something I had to learn. When I lacked self love, self awareness, self understanding, self honoring, self respect, people will have their boundaries. And I would think that it was a rule or some sort of disrespect to me. And it was really, no, this is this person's way of showing how they respect themselves. When you don't have that in place for yourself, you get very defensive and upset at other people for setting that tone. Once I started to cultivate this within myself, I was able to have such better, transparent relations with people because I understood that their boundaries and the way that they respect themselves has nothing to do with me, but it has everything to do with the way that they love themselves and the way that they want to share that love with other people. And that's what it is. We're here to be for ourselves, but most importantly, we're here to be in relation with the world. And we want to share the way that we love on ourselves with other people. So, respecting yourself is so important because it helps to protect you from being in situations where people do not value you on the same level. And that's the final notion of the self love journey. Once you are developing this understanding of yourself, you're moving in a space of honor, you're moving in a space of respect, you're moving in a space of value, right? When you understand your value, you do not put yourself in situations to be devalued. That to me is the highest form of self love, is really being able to always walk away from the table alone when you are not being served respect, honor, and value, right? The reason why I don't include love in that is because, like I said in the beginning, everybody has their own definition of love. For some people, love might be manipulation. For some people, love might be freedom. For some people, love can be a form of control. For some people, love can be a form of fluidity, right? A form of connectiveness. Everybody has their own definition of love, and I've learned that through cultivating self-love within myself is this notion of I don't need other people's love. I don't need to be loved by others because I love myself. What I do need is respect, is honor, and to be valued. That's what I do need. And a lot of times we think that we need love from others, and it's like, no, what do we really actually need? Because their love language can be something different. And someone can be telling that they love you, right? Or they have love for you, but they're not showing that through their actions. So you have to decide based off of the way you love yourself through specific actions what that even means. And that's been what I've been able to cultivate. So again, I'm just expressing and communicating my journey in hopes to inspire other people, in hopes to have people ask themselves certain questions. And these were things that I was able to develop not only on my own, but through the help of therapy, through the help of my Reiki mom. She's like a second mom to me. She's an elder, and she's definitely a high priestess, and she just helps me on my journey through my herbalist, through acupuncturist, through so many different modalities of healing, and most importantly through my yoga practice. I am a yoga and meditation teacher as well as an astrologer, so I use the study of astrology to understand myself on a deeper level, to really see, okay, where are we having these areas in our life where we kind of need to further develop a self-understanding and a self-love ritual, especially if you are folks who have a lot of Venus. I'm not going to dive too deep into astrology because this is not the astrology podcast. But for folks who have a lot of Venus, if you are a Taurus, a Libra, or you have a lot of sixes, you have to work on developing self-love because you have so much Venus energy, and Venus tends to pour into others before pouring into themselves. And I have all of that in my chart. So I've had to harness and further develop a deeper understanding of, what's my value? How do I move in the world with an understanding of myself and the courage to communicate this understanding without disrespecting other people, but just asking to be seen. And that's what happens when you develop your self-love journey or your self-love ritual. It is allowing yourself to be seen. And you cannot allow yourself to be seen or heard until you see or hear yourself. And that's why the first step is cultivating understanding. So again, we'll run through that. Understanding, developing understanding within yourself. Second one, self-honor. Making sure you're not saying yes to things you don't really want to do, right? Communicating what those needs are, which leads into self-respect, the blueprint of how you want to be treated, which then leads into value. And when you value yourself, then you are able to really reap the benefits of self-worth, reap the attraction of what the energy you're putting out. You're going to reap that attraction. If you are putting yourself out there as a person of value, you are going to attract that value back, whether that be through your hobbies, through your work, through your friendships, relationships. And these are the ways that I have been able to cultivate such deeper self understanding, self love, and self value within myself. So, thank you so much, everyone, for joining for this podcast episode. I hope that these things have helped to have you ask yourself a little bit more of deeper questions and help you to see where you are worthy of everything that you want and you are worthy of the love that you give to other people. Pour all of that back into yourself. And again, I'm going to end on this note. If you are a woman watching, do not be afraid to put your needs first. Do not. You are worthy. You are the matriarch. So you are worthy. Okay? Thank y'all so much. And I cannot wait to see you for my next podcast episode.